Hello out there. Welcome to Yoga Talks Podcast. My name is Jay Brown. It is a pleasure to be back with you again. I was away. I was gone for a week. I was in Switzerland and just over the border in the Italian Alps. I was teaching there, and it was a great trip. It was really just wonderful on many levels. I managed to get away from stuff. You know how sometimes you go on a vacation and you don't actually get away, like all the stuff you were stressing about was still going on in your mind the whole time. You never even really relaxed. Well, this time that didn't happen for me. I really got away from it. I felt so far away from all the stuff that was dogging me before I left that I really did relax, and I felt like myself again, and I could see my situation more clear. Like, oh, if this happens, I can do that, and if this happens, I can do that. Like, I'm not screwed. I'm fine. Everything's good. You know, it's amazing how much just a little time away where you really do get to get away from it can clear up your perspective. And then the yoga was just great. The students were such a pleasure. You know, it wasn't like my whole gentle is the new advanced slow yoga revolution thing where I'm out there trying to like offer this unconventional approach. The woman who hosted me has also studied with Mark, who was in the last podcast, and her students were already on board. They were already doing it. So it just was easy. Felt like a piece of cake. We just shared some tools and connected as people, and we were in raw nature, and it was just a glorious time. But I've been back for a couple of days now, and all that stuff that I got away from, well, it all came slamming back. It didn't go anywhere. It was still here when I got back. I guess that's sort of the backlash to getting away, is that you come back. Fortunately, I've been in a much clearer state of mind. So when you're in a clear state of mind, it's a whole lot easier to deal with it. Still, just stuff like, the center, you know, like water coming down from the ceiling at the center because somebody who moved into the apartment upstairs is a moron and like leaves the shower running with the curtain out. I don't know what goes on up there or why randomly water comes down from the ceiling. It's like I can't tell you how many times I called my landlord about this stuff. And he tries to help, but it's just some dumb person up there leaving his water on. What are you going to do? In any case, it's just amazing how much energy that center takes out of me. And I guess that's one of the other things that I came back with from this trip, because it's only recently that I have these opportunities where people want to invite me to come to their yoga center in Switzerland and teach for people, you know. And you could kind of see how it's possible where, if I have these opportunities, and I have a fair amount of them that I haven't been able to take advantage of, I could probably just book myself a tour and travel around and go to all these yoga centers. And part of that's enticing because you show up to these places, they're not where you're from, especially in like international travel. I'm like this New York yoga teacher, and sometimes they've like seen me online or read something, and there's a little bit of like, you're a yoga celebrity, which is new to me. I don't usually get like yoga celebrity vibe. But I got a little bit of that, and it feels good. I'm like this important person who's traveling internationally to teach to you, and that feels good. That feels good. So I thought, wow, this is what it would be like. I just close the center and book myself these tours and travel around and do these workshops. But then I have to think that I don't know that I really want to do that. I don't know that's what I want to do. I enjoy going to places and meeting people. But as I've said on this podcast before, I actually much prefer to stay home. Like to have a brick and mortar place that I go to every day. That's my favorite part of the job. That's what everything that I'm doing is built on. So I don't know that I want to just travel around and not have a center. And another thing about the center I want to mention is because I had a little run-in with one of the teachers at the center, and she's probably going to listen to this, and I hope she doesn't mind that I'm talking about it, but it was important for me, and I think it's important for the people who listen to this podcast, actually, because it's the real truth about what's happening at for-profit independent yoga centers, I think. And I know there's a fair amount of center owners who are listening here. I know there's a lot of new teachers who are listening because you guys are sending me these emails, which I really love. Please keep sending them. But what happened was there's a new teacher. She's relatively new to the center, and she showed up inquiring about teaching opportunities because she'd studied with people who are also coming from the Desikachar Krishnamacharya tradition, and she knew I had some affiliation there, and she was looking for opportunities, and I really respect the people that she's trained with, and I said, it would be great to have you. I happened to be starting one of my trainings and invited her to participate in the training as my guest, just so that we could get on the same page, and she would have a clear idea about my vision for what the center is, and like I said, just be on the same page. So she did, and she was great, and I was really happy to have her around. And as soon as I could, I offered her whatever opportunities came, whatever subs were coming up or whatever available time slots came available. I said, hey, you want them? And she took a couple of them, but honestly, they weren't like the best time slots. They're early morning time slots, they're afternoon time slots, and these are not the best attended necessarily, so they're not very much money. And lately, those classes have been a little bit down in attendance. There's up periods and down periods, And the way that I do it at my center is I'm doing a pure by attendance pay scale. So basically, it means that if the classes are smaller, you're probably going to make less than you would make at some other places. But if the attendance is up, you're going to make more, and there's no cap. And it doesn't put a burden on the center where if you only have 2 or 3 people in class, it's costing the center money. We're just taking a cut. Like you get a cut and the center gets a cut. It's a pretty fair cut. A better cut than I was getting before I opened the center. But still, if there's only a couple people, you're not making a lot of money. And one of the classes that this teacher took was a community class, which is where I try to give people an opportunity to have class for less money. So 4 p.m. during the week, we have community classes for half price. And often these have been classes where like new teachers coming out of the training will take them. And, you get basically $4 a head. It's like 50% of the cut. But if only one person comes to class, you made $4 for an hour and a half worth of work, So that's basically what happened. And this teacher, she felt upset about it, and I totally understand because she's incredibly well-trained. She's got 1,500 hours worth of training, 7 years worth of teaching experience, and she just got paid $4 for an hour and a half worth of work. And she just felt like she wasn't being valued. And she was kind of pointing it at me like I don't value her. And then I kind of came back at her and said, well, this is a community class. It's supposed to be a way to give people class for less money, and you're getting 50%. If it costs the center money, then we can't have the classes at all. And she kind of, her response was, well, I also work at not-for-profits. She teaches through Liberation Prison Yoga, which, by the way, the founder, Annika, is coming on this podcast. A couple people of you have mentioned her to me and said you should get her on. Well, that's going to happen. So working through this not-for-profit, She doesn't make any money, and she doesn't expect to. But because it was a for-profit center, she expected to be better compensated, and that would make sense, you know. But the reality is I think that there's this misconception about what happens at for-profit independent centers, because the truth is I don't make money off of the classes that are happening at the center. I thought I was going to. The whole idea, and I think I may have said that before, where it was, well, I only can make so much money off my own classes. If I own a center, then I can also make money off of other people's yoga classes. Well, what I've learned is that's really not true. That's not how it's been working for me. What's been happening is the center basically pays for itself. And that includes like the 10 or 11 classes a week that I'm teaching. I don't even make money off the classes that I'm teaching at the center. It all goes back into just paying for the center and having the center exist. Where I'm making the money that I'm making, like the modest living that I have to support my family, is on the teacher trainings I'm doing twice a year, the travel gigs, and now the video sales. That's where my living is coming from, really. Now, the question is, can I really have those things without the center? Like the teacher trainings and even the platform to develop what I've developed to have the opportunities that I have all come out of having the center. So I needed that center. So I don't really know. I don't know what to do about the whole situation. I mean, oh, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. I was saying about this teacher, so I informed her of this, you know, hey, I don't even make money off of these classes. And I just think there's this idea that not-for-profit, and I've written about this, is somehow more honorable or something. But if I was a not-for-profit, if I didn't do for-profit, if I made a not-for-profit structure, I would probably have to spend most of my time fundraising, which would be to get the money to pay my salary, which is guaranteed. And then often in those situations, the teachers don't make anything at all, or they make very little. So I don't know if it's any more honorable for me to have a not-for-profit and shill for donations than it is to like have a for-profit and be out there on the market selling my wares, you know? In any case, I guess where I'm landing right now is that I do really want to have a place where I can just do my daily teaching, because that's what the foundation of what I do. I know that's the foundation of what a lot of you out there are doing. And so we got to do what we need to do to make these things happen. But just to be clear, you know, the center owner is not making money, not making a lot of money. There's generally a sole project that's happening. And that's probably a good enough segue into our conversation today with Pleasance Silicki, because she knows firsthand about all this stuff. She had a center called Lil Omm, which did have to close down, and we talk about all of it. A lot of other stuff, though. A lot of other stuff that led up to what she was doing and what she's doing now. But I guess before we listen to the conversation with Pleasance, I want to say to all of these teachers who've been emailing me, because there's sort of two types of emails I'm getting. One is from a younger teacher in their 20s who's just finished yoga teacher training. The other are from older teachers who are in their 40s who've just finished 200-hour trainings. And you guys are out looking out there as to like what the profession is, basically. And that's why they're interested in the podcast, because it's sort of like an insider, honest look at it. And I feel a little bad. I wish I had more answers. I don't. It's a pretty uncertain time. Like when Carol Horton came on the podcast, she said that it's just so not a clear situation anymore. It's so many different tracks and so many diverse things happening. It's kind of hard to know where you are or where to go. So I know that the basis for everything that I've been doing has been my own personal practice and daily teaching in my own community with my own disappears. So it's got to come back to that. All right, you guys, I think I've probably gone on enough. I hope there was something in there for somebody. I want to, again, thank y'all for listening. I want to encourage you to check out the workshop again, Gentle is a New Advanced, at jbrownyogavideo.com. And I've got some exciting news about things that are happening with the podcast, people who are coming on. I'm going to tell you about that on the other side. So let's get to it. Let's listen to me and the very fun and sweet Pleasance Silicki. Hi, how's it going?
Good. Yeah.
Here we are.
I know. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, all things considered.
Good.
So, cool. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course, we've never actually spoken before.
I feel like we have.
I know, that's the thing. That's why I'm starting there, because I was getting ready to talk to you, and I thought, oh, cool, I'm going to talk to Pleasance, as though, I talked to you a bunch of times, but I've never talked to you. And we've only had, a couple of emails together.
I know.
And the reason I think that I felt that about you, because I feel like we share something in terms of, the writing that we do. Which is that you do what I do, what I call, you're radically transparent. I feel like you just, don't have any, you really tell me what's going on, as best as you know it.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's, I read your emails, and I try to do that as a writer too. And I find it very liberating, and I feel like people do kind of know me, even when they don't know me sometimes, because of that or something.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
So,
I love that.
So anyways, hey, Pleasance.
Hello.
And what was going on today? You had to push us back. What was going on? Why? What's more important than the podcast?
I know. I feel so bad because
don't feel bad. I'm teasing.
Like that.
I'm teasing.
I'm very professional, but I have a broken foot,
Oh, right. That's right.
So I yesterday had some severe back and shoulder pain, and there's a local massage therapist, and I called her and I was like, I'm hurting, and can you see me? And she's like, yeah, I'll come pick you up because I can't drive or anything. So she came and got me and worked, and I feel so much better, enough that I can move. This is week 5, and I'm just shocked at how resilient my body has been. But yesterday, it just really, I was just in a lot of pain, which I haven't been in. So that sucked.
I see. And why do you think that pain came about? Was it just shifts in the weather or something? Sometimes I couldn't do it.
For sure. But I think also because my foot is starting to feel better, my life is starting to sort of pick up again. And so I was out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday on crutches and sort of out half in my life. And I think that it was just too much,
So I'm sorry. I don't know if you told me, but how did you break your foot?
I just walked out the front door and rolled on my ankle walking the dog. I mean, I wish it was something way more sexy.
You didn't decide to come up with a sexy story about what happened to your ankle.
It was so simple. It was 6 a.m. I was not rushing. I did not have my phone. Yeah. It was just a very simple, it was a clean break, but it just completely stopped my life,
Well, isn't that interesting that the universe said you have to stop?
It said it loud and clear. Mm-hmm. And that first day I resisted that completely. I mean, I just said, no, that's not why this happened.
Yeah, well, but there's been a lot going on with you.
Oh, then by week 3, I was like, this is my surrender sabbatical. This was so meant to be. I've learned so much, so.
Well, maybe we should track back some.
Yeah.
Because I know you originally because you had a yoga center called Lil Omm. Mm-hmm. And when did Lil Omm open?
We opened March 27th, 2010 in our own space.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say your own space, you were teaching classes out of somewhere prior to that?
Yeah, I have been teaching with a handful of teachers under the name Lil Omm out of Georgetown, Lululemon. When Lululemon opened in Georgetown, they had a studio on the second floor. And when they opened, they invited me to come and teach there, and teach classes to serve the community. So I did some prenatal and some itsy bitsy and mom and baby. And so I did that for about a year and realized we had grown out of the space and we wanted more flexibility with the schedule. And so when we opened in 2010, we had already served 400 families. We had a mailing list of 400 or whatever who'd come to our classes.
And was the center in the same area that you had been teaching in previously, or was it in a different location?
Like the neighborhood over.
Yeah, okay. So it wasn't
close.
Too far. Right.
It was close, but it was a whole new demographic because a lot of the Georgetown families walked to the studio when it was at Lulu. And so when we moved to the Palisades, and many of them did drive over, but we just then had all the people from the Palisades who then walked,
Well, it's interesting because I remember I have a couple pairs of Lululemon pants that don't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. These like Asana pants that were like the best yoga pants for men that were ever made. And then they stopped making them. They don't make them anymore. But I remember back in the early days, it was really kind of grassrootsy. And I got like a discount because I was a teacher. And
it was an amazing, amazing community. The people, I'm still in touch with many of the people.
And are they still involved with Lululemon?
Some are. Many of them have gone on to be ambassadors and teach workshops and things like that for staff for Lulu. But I worked there as like a life transition between my teaching career and like teaching in DC public schools and charter schools.
Oh, is that what you did before being a yoga teacher?
Yes, that's what my background was in.
All right, so let's track back even farther. So,
okay.
Well, what was the first yoga class you ever went to?
I have one that was in high school that I talk about where I just laid on the floor and fell asleep, and I was very giggly and thought that was ridiculous and left. Okay. And one in graduate school in Philadelphia. A bunch of the girls in my graduate program said, "Oh, come to this yoga class." And I said, I fell asleep. It's not for me. But, that had been like probably 7 years before. So decided it was okay to try again. And I went, and the center was, everyone was really skinny and really beautiful. And I walked in with my friends who were also skinny and beautiful. And, I spent about probably the first 20 minutes doing what I thought everybody else was doing. And the teacher came over very loudly and said, "I think you're in the wrong class."
Oh,
I think you need to go to beginners or level one. Meanwhile, Jay, I didn't even know that there was a beginners or level one. I just was joining my friends for the evening. Nobody had really given me that information.
That's not a really good experience. That's not a really good intro to.
Yeah.
And what year was that? Do you remember what year that was?
That was in like 99, 2000.
Okay, so then did that scare you away from yoga for a long time after that, or?
Yes, I definitely felt like I didn't belong, and I felt like it was an elite, practice.
And so you went to teach in DC public schools. Is that what you said?
So yeah, I left graduate school in Philadelphia, and I knew that I was going to teach in DC public schools, and I taught inner city, low income children exclusively, all the schools I was in on purpose. I studied urban education and was very passionate about African American children specifically, and working with school districts and schools and community organizations that helped African American children. And
was there a specific subject that you taught?
Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, the littles.
The little ones, yeah.
But also in the school, the fun part about the schools I worked in also was that there was a tremendous amount of community support, like nonprofits that would come in and work with the kids, but they needed teachers on the ground to actually implement the program. So, during the day I would teach kindergarten, but on Mondays and Wednesdays, I was the tennis coach for the 5th and 6th grade girls. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I was the soccer coach or the cheerleading coach or the writing coach, I basically said yes and signed up for everything I possibly could to do as much as I could.
Wow.
And on the weekends would pick up my kids and take them to the Botanic Gardens or the Capitol, or, we have lots of free places here.
When did you meet your husband? I read something about your husband. I read an article and it said that your husband was a Republican. Is that true?
He is.
Oh my God, you're married to a Republican. What? I'm teasing, of course, but I guess that's a thing. I guess yoga teachers, I guess there's plenty of Republican yoga teachers. I shouldn't say that. That's totally
I don't know.
But so how did you meet your husband?
We met, I was 19 and he was working. He was in mortgages at the time. He's 5 years older than I am, and did not go to college. So he was already in the workforce. And we met just at a part-time job that I'd had in college. And I had a big crush on him and thought he was adorable, but he was the first Republican that I really had a close relationship with. Like I didn't really know anybody. I'd heard of them. But I'm from Connecticut and I'm Jewish and I'm from a really liberal, family. And
you fell for this self-made Republican guy.
I did. And he's amazing. And he's just I'm very Gemini and he's very just moderate. He's just very steady, very supportive. And I say we're like Dharma and Greg. I mean, almost exactly. Like I'm the wacky yoga teacher with all these weird names and into all the woo-woo stuff. And, he wears a suit. No, he doesn't wear a suit anymore, but I kind of picture him that way. He holds it together for us.
Nice.
And he supports especially I think, the big thing is that with this journey and with all the studying and classes and workshops and teachers, I'm always kind of adventuring around. And he's holding down the fort. I mean, he has seen how I've changed so much over the years and for the better and how much happier I am, and more steady. So he is very supportive. I say, I'm going to Yogaville this weekend. He's like, okay, great. He's always taking care of the kids and always.
I've seen that too. I've seen that when you utilize yoga practice and the tools work for you and it helps you. And then the people around you who care about you see that happen. They get really supportive of your yoga.
Yeah. He really is.
Yeah, I'm down with whatever that is. It's making you like that.
It's really wonderful. And he's been that way the whole time. From the moment we met.
And you met
said,
when you were 19?
Go do this.
You met when you were 19.
Yeah. And the second year, the year I was 20, I went to Israel for 6 months. And same thing. He was like, go, have a great time. And that support is just amazing. I mean, it's just been I have no regrets. I went to graduate school for a year. We were still together. He stayed in DC and I went to Philly, and it's good for us.
And
it's been really good.
You guys have had 2 children.
And we have 2 kiddos. Mm-hmm.
How old are they now?
8 and 4.5.
Wow. See, I got 6 and 1. So we're in there still.
So
we're in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but both my kids are at the same school this year. My son is in pre-K and my daughter's in 2nd grade. And that has shifted everything again, having them there together all day. And it's beautiful to kind of see them continue to grow up together, and they're so in love and with each other and life, and that's amazing.
They just keep getting bigger, don't they?
Yeah.
All right, so how do we get from you being a school teacher in D.C. with your Republican husband and your 2 kids to getting into yoga? Did you get into yoga before the kids or after the kids?
Before.
Okay, so you got into yoga before you had the kids. So how did you get back to yoga after this horrible initial experience?
Yeah, so I think that it all relates because the intensity of what it's like to teach in a classroom, in a city classroom every day, it's so much. I mean, it's just beyond the movies and the books and the stories when you're really on the front lines doing everything you can. And when the population that you're working with, if they don't learn to read in your 1st grade classroom, may never learn to read. Like that stress and that pressure that I put on myself to be excellent for them every day was just not sustainable.
Wow. Well, I have to interrupt you for a second because my daughter's in 1st grade right now.
Yeah.
And her teacher she's in this G&T program,
Mm-hmm.
which I have such mixed feelings about,
Mm-hmm.
like we didn't prepare her for anything. We took her to take the test and she got in and now she's in a G&T class.
Mm-hmm.
And all it means is 6 months accelerated, basically, from what I
Mm-hmm.
understand. Although I do think sometimes the teachers are a little bit different. But in any case, this teacher this year, she's new and she's young and I can tell she's pretty green. And, I think she's doing an okay job, but I feel at the beginning of the year she was having a rough time, and I just felt like the parents were not on her side.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us rallied to her defense, and like I think it's been a good year, but like I got to thinking about that. I was like, I just thought she's like 27 or something.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing her best to, like, this big classroom of kids, like whatever it is, 18, 20 kids or something, And I thought, so we helped her out, but I imagine that situation, and it's kind of thankless, and you don't get a lot of support from the school always. And so how long did you do it? How long did you stick it out?
It's so much. There's so many dynamics. There's so many relationships. There's so many pieces to it. I was in one school for 3 years and another school for 2 years, and then sort of got recruited to leave and be on the board and co-found a charter school for boys and who are ages 3 to 6.
And do you have an opinion about charter schools, having been in the public schools and charter schools? Because I know it's like a whole big debate around here. I mean, we don't have to get totally into it if it's too far afield, but I know that I'm involved in my daughter's school. I'm in the SLT, whatever, the student leadership team. So I have these meetings and I'm privy to some things, and it's wild how it works. And so I don't know, there's big debates about it. And do you have anything you'd say about?
Well, especially in DC at the time, we were part of like a very large movement where the charter movement was kind of taking over, where they had predicted that, within 10 years, at more than half of DC children would be in charter schools. And I felt really mixed about it because I felt upset as a traditional classroom teacher who would get a student, say, in April, right? Because the parent will pull them out of the charter school and say, well, we'll just go back to the neighborhood school. Here I am doing all the work I can possibly do to build community and relationships and trust. And then I would get new students in like February, March, and April. And it really affected the dynamic of the group. And it was kind of like, as just like the neighborhood school, we were like the leftovers. And I always felt like if our neighborhood parents would just come and take all that support and energy into the school that's in their neighborhood, we might be able to make a real difference and work together and be partners. But instead, DC got into this habit of like being able to pick and choose where they were going to put kids. And it really affected the classrooms and the teachers, and of course the children, because they had moved schools 2 or 3 times. And you can imagine the type of children who were moving schools multiple times in a year. It wasn't because they were really growing and learning in the classroom they were in. A lot of times the parents would hear something they didn't like and they'd move their kid. So that was a habit for a little while. But when I got recruited to leave the school for this opportunity, it was because it was such a different school. Like the way that I had seen African-American boys be treated in all of the schools that I worked in repeatedly year after year. The same little boy in kindergarten is in the office, and then he's there in 2nd grade, and then he's there in 3rd grade. Like we had to do something. And the team of us who started this school, that's what really drew me out and said, okay, I will go to the charters and work on this new mission, because there was a difference in my classrooms between how boys learn and how girls learn. And there's all this, we could debate about that forever. It's not the point. I just saw it firsthand all over and over and over. So I felt really passionate about bringing the boys' work into the charter system and having an option for boys.
And then how did it go? How did the charter school?
It was so hard.
Yeah.
It was the hardest thing I've ever done it was so hard. It was so much work. It was so intense. Everything about a startup, everything about starting a school. I mean, I was 28, I think, or 27. It was so much. The boys were so beautiful, these beautiful, beautiful souls and human beings. and just kind of dodging all day long. Like, you never know what's going to come at you that first year. You know, you're like cleaning the toilets while teaching the math class, while talking to parents, while driving them home. I mean, it was so intense.
And how long were you at the charter school?
So I was only there for that first year. That first year was really tough. On the yoga side, I had already been practicing yoga.
Okay,
and I was just
let's
so
get
excited.
To that. So when did you go back to yoga, and why?
Because of the stress of the schools.
I see. That's such a common theme. Other people I've talked to, that's what they say. Like, they just get to a place in their life where like they have to do something.
I had to do something. I was in so much pain. I like physically, emotionally, so stressed out. But I was so conflicted because my day job was so powerful, so emotional, so
fulfilling
intense,
in many respects.
so
I'm
fulfilling. Sure. But I would leave and I would like smoke a whole pack of cigarettes, drink 6 beers. Like, I was so angry at the world because of what I was seeing. And to my friends too, I mean, I was really hard to be around because I had a big chip on my shoulder and I am doing such good work, and you guys, you know, there was this whole like me versus them.
One of those folks.
I was really, and even friends who were teachers who taught in private schools. Or who taught in schools in the good part of town. I was really bitchy to them too.
You were taking a righteous stance, eh?
Yeah. And it just kept getting worse. It wasn't getting better. And I...
All right, so what was the yoga that you went to when you went back?
Ended up going to yoga because I woke up one day and I couldn't move. And this is a thread because I ended up finding out that I had piriformis syndrome. And this is going to be, you know, a reoccurring theme, this hip issue that I have, or glute issue, depending on how you want to talk about it. But I call it my hip issue.
Your hip issue, meaning you have pain.
I have a lot of pain, and I fell. I mean, I couldn't walk. And so I was in a lot of pain, and the doctors and everyone said, nothing's wrong. It's psychosomatic. And I called the local yoga center, and my friend Kristen answered the phone, and I said, I can't exercise. I can't go to the gym. My hip is hurting. I can't walk. I've heard yoga is good, but I don't want to do any chanting, no meditating, nothing quiet. I want to be physical and I want to stretch. And I heard that it's like that this will help me.
That's how you came at him, huh?
I mean, I came at her like, do not make me relax was essentially what I was saying to her. And she's so sweet. She was like, okay, dear, you know, I'm so glad she didn't hang up on me.
No, never hang up.
You know, she said, okay, dear, I have a perfect class and teacher for you. And she sent me to beginning Ashtanga with,
good call.
This wonderful woman, Devin, who I still adore. And we had a big full circle moment last year. Where she came to Lil Omm with her kids, and it just filled my heart because she was really such a wonderful, wonderful teacher, and she was a student of Beryl Bender Birch. So,
we should say Beryl Bender Birch. In my recollection, she's the one who really coined the phrase "power yoga."
That first book that she wrote. Yeah,
she was the one who took Ashtanga and made it for runners, basically, and then called it power yoga.
But I tell you, I walked into that class, Jay, and
But, you know, given where you were, that might not have been the best class for you to go to on other levels. You know what I mean?
Of course. But it just was
it's like... what made sense.
That center really was a Kundalini center. Like, Kristen, the main teacher, was a Kundalini teacher, and they had a lot of Kundalini. And so, I think they only had Kundalini, Hatha, and Ashtanga. Like, I think those were the 3. So she just was trying to listen to me and kind of send me to where I was saying I should go.
Yeah. She was trying to give you what you wanted. And she did. That was the right class, I'm sure. Yeah.
And I don't know how much about my injury I talked to her about, to be honest. You know, I think
I'm just saying like a hip injury that's causing you extreme pain is harder to manage in an Ashtanga class sometimes than other kinds of classes. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. But I think I would have never gone back if she'd sent me to Kundalini or Hatha.
Although I bet there's some Ashtanga people out there listening right now who are like all pissed off. They're going to send me some email. All right, bring it, you guys. Bring it. I mean, I guess, you know what? I have studied Ashtanga with people who would be able to handle it. It would be, you know, if it was done.
But she taught modifications for everything. I mean, her entry point and her accessibility, It was so beautiful.
Nice.
I just
Well, she
came
got you
in.
back into yoga, so.
She got me into it to begin with, so I wasn't
Yeah.
running out
Oh,
of the
that's
door
right. You were
feeling
never into it,
scared.
yeah.
And I mean, it was wonderful. And I remember I sat there sort of like, we went through the primary series or the first part of it. She really chunked it out for us. And my heart was racing. I fell in love with watching her and the other students and the breathing and the movement. And that was not what we had done in my high school class or in the class in Philly. Like that was not what was going on there. But this, I just felt deeply connected and my mind I think this is also the key. My mind loved the fact that it was the same.
Yeah.
Even though now that's not good for my body and now it's not the way that I practice. At that time, I needed that structure because I felt out of control and my kids' lives were out of control. I feel like it was home. And I remember saying to her to that first class, like, how much should I be coming? How many times should I come here? Because it's an hour and a half and this is kind of long. And, she said, I'd like you to come 3 times a week and then eventually every day, And I remember thinking, that is insane. That's crazy. And then angrily, like, who has time for that? What is she talking about? She obviously doesn't know how busy my life is. I mean, I sort of like stormed out in my mind because I was just couldn't believe that could be a truth. I was really resisting what she was saying, but I kept coming back.
See, I've had that happen. I've had people come to my class and it doesn't seem like they're into it at all. And yet they come back. And then eventually, they sort of soften or something sometimes,
Right. Well, I mean, that's it, right? Is like the mental barriers, the blocks, all of these. I had so many attachments to thoughts. I had so many attachments to the way things should be and how they are and what I can't let go of. Just all of it, all of the things that you learn over years and years of practice of that reflection. I love that young woman who went to that class, and was confused and sad and angry, but kept going and who wasn't good. I mean, I'm not like a gymnast. I was not a cheerleader. I've always been larger than everybody else. I was not an athlete. I was always voted like, most school spirit.
You were a first grade teacher.
I was a first grade teacher, and so like I couldn't just bend over and touch my toes or do back bends or do things. It took time. Like my practice evolved with that slow, steady showing up.
So having your practice, that's kind of became the thing that steadied you from that unstable place you were in.
Yeah. And I was able to share my love for yoga with the teachers and students of the schools that I worked in the last few years of them. And that brought so much joy. And
I see. So you brought the yoga into the teaching
into
of
the
kids
schools.
and the kids and the staff.
Yeah. So I had like a teacher class and then I had a kids class.
So that makes sense. Cause there you go. There's Lil Omm's beginning right there.
Exactly. Right? And you couldn't call it yoga because we were in a very religious neighborhood. So I called it,
well, isn't that
movement.
That's a pertinent topic though. Yoga in the
Exactly.
schools, right? You were there. So you guys didn't call it yoga. What did you call it?
I called it movement.
Movement. It was just a movement class.
And then I just taught them and we did, and especially the boys' school, they loved all the fun arm balances and the homework poses. They thought that was awesome.
Right.
And the
it's like
breathing.
breakdancing.
Yeah, we had a blast with that. So that was really kind of the light for me at the school was planning that and working with the kids.
Okay, so when did you decide to leave the public school system, being a good first grade teacher, and just go the yoga route entirely?
Well, we had a tragedy at the charter school, and one of the staff members was shot at the front door of the school and killed. And
oh my gosh,
I was not at the school the day it happened, which is another teacher and I had just left the campus to go do some work at headquarters, like the main district headquarters. And we all think her and I are the two most sensitive on the staff. So it was really kind of a blessing that we were not there for just kind of crisis management. And then the next day, I mean, even before that, I had to come home and tell my husband, who had always been so supportive of the work that I did, kind of his worst, we've had this terrible thing happen. And then because I was in administration, I had to deal with it from an admin role, not from a human role. And I couldn't do it.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
It means I had to go in early and open the doors and go past the tape and open school the next day, sort of like as if nothing had happened, right? To keep moving forward. But I wanted to close for a few days. Like, we were small enough and our staff was there and the boys were there when it happened. And so for me, I wanted space. Like, I couldn't breathe. I felt like everything was tightening, and I felt this real sense of like, what am I doing with my life? Especially because there's a lot of...
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.